Okay. So I've been with the University of Bridgeport for approximately 11 years. I've been with the Nutrition Institute probably from the early onset of the creation of the virtual clinic. I was rather big instrumental person in the evolvement of the virtual clinic, which is the last course you will do in this program, which is more of the application and the integration of everything that you've learned. A lot of case studies and assessments and all the things will be put together in that particular course for you. I've been in clinical practice for about 20 years. I teach at, obviously, Bridgeport. I also teach in the medical program at Georgetown Medical School. I do some consulting for a big laboratory as far as functional testing is concerned. So my experience in the field of nutrition is quite vast. My areas of specialization would be probably metabolic syndrome, diabetes, intestinal permeability, and sports nutrition. And obviously in this particular course, what I wanted to put together in my presentations would be, a little bit more of a functional approach to pathophysiology than just the standard textbook kind of concept, and you'll see that they'll be built into the lectures as we go along. So can everybody see my screen? Yep. Okay, good. So let's just go through how you accumulate points, right? So let's just start with these discussions, right, that we get questions on. Now, everybody got full marks the first week. Some of you did a fantastic job on the summary. So really what I'm looking for in summaries from week 1 to week 14 in this section, right, the 15-point section, is legitimately your study notes, okay? And I'll tell you why I want to see that. So as you go through the videos, and there's what you need to focus on, okay? All the videos that have me in them, right, where I'm physically presenting, going through a PowerPoint, speaking, that is where all your exam questions come out of, okay? I don't take exam questions additionally out of the textbook. That is a textbook presentation, by the way, but I don't take any additional strange questions that's not in the presentation. So legitimately, if you go through my presentations, the questions on the multiple choice exams come directly out of my presentations, okay, directly. I also didn't trick them up in any way, shape, or form. So I'm not going to just move one word to trick you in an exam question, okay? So why do I want to see your summaries in these lectures? I just want to see that you've covered all the work to make sure that you are prepared for the exam. Does that make sense to everybody? So whether you have handwritten notes that you want to scan in on one PDF document and upload it for the week, I'm happy to look at that. I'm not requiring anybody to do responses on these posts. I am the only person that's physically looking at your notes, right? So if there is a study group, if there's a group of you working together and you want to upload those notes as a team, do it. I'm fine with it. Just indicate to me who's in your study group, okay? So that I know that when I'm reviewing these documents that it's group 1 and it's 4 students in one group or 2 students in one group or whatever. So that's legitimately what I'm looking for in this, okay? As far as all the perfected references and all that kind of stuff is concerned, yeah, do we want to see some references? Yes, but in this particular area, I'm not that concerned about it, really, even though for later work in this program, it might not be a bad idea to just start the APA 7, but I'm not going to fail you because you had one APA reference wrong. I'm legitimately interested in your knowledge on the presentations, okay? So that's the first thing. So if you do a summary for me and you've covered all the material in the 2 or 3 lectures that I present a week, you're going to get 15 out of 15 every week, I can assure you, okay? I don't read them to the fine point. I design these PowerPoints. I know what's in them. I look through the key points and see that you've touched on them. However you do your summaries or study journals is really what you can provide me with. I'm not going to critically assess that, okay? So then the second category of this are the critical thinking discussion boards. The first one is coming up next week. That's week 3, week 6, week 9, week 12, and week 14. Okay, I give you a topic that I want you to discuss, and it might be something like glyphosate or genetically modified organisms, and then you go out and you write a post on that, right? That's where I need you to have perfect references, right? So I need you to really reference that properly for me. So you will lose a point if the reference isn't at APA 7 formatting, okay? So that's that area. This is also the only critical thinking discussion boards or any kind of discussion boards that require you to respond to. So when you respond to another student's post, you also have to reference. Does it make sense to everybody? So you legitimately have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 discussion boards on a specific topic that I need you to do a post with references and a response with references. 2 references are fine in the post. 1 reference is fine in the response, okay? You'll also get 35 points if you do that. If you miss a response, you lose like 5 points. But if you do a post and response, please do that because you want to accumulate these 3 points. Generally, when I've taught this course, 95% of my students have 100% in this section. There's 3 sections to your grade. You have the tests, the exams, they count for 100 points, right? Or a third of your grade. You have these discussion boards and your study notes to post, 100 points. And then your final project, which most of you have chosen a topic on, is your other 100 points. Now, generally speaking, when it comes to these discussion boards, how long do they need to be? They don't need to be excessively long. I just want to see your opinion and run wild there. Okay, let your brains go, be creative, be outspoken, be controversial if you want to be. I'm fine with that. It's to open up a discussion in our area. So whatever topic I throw at you, let your brain go to where your passions lie, your interpretations are. You know, give me some sort of a reference on how you came up with that. Or alternatively, if you have a reference that you don't agree with, you can do that as well. You can physically discuss a reference and take it apart and say, I don't agree with this, I don't agree with this, I don't agree with that. That's really that's why it's called critical thinking discussion boards. So I'm not a person that likes to give discussion boards every week on every student because I know most students don't read them, right? Because you're too busy with other things. So again, for the first 100 or the first third of your grade, please make sure that you post every week your notes, however once you get into a rhythm, I'm going to be fine with that. And legitimately, folks, I've had people physically do handwritten notes, scan them in, PDF them, and post them. I'm good with that. Okay. So just make that clear. Clear to everybody? Make sense? Legitimately, you'll get 100%. I promise you, if you do that for me. Okay. So let's go to the second phase. The second phase is going to be your final paper. Now, you've chosen a topic. Just follow the guidelines of what I laid out for the final paper. Just don't make grammatical mistakes and obvious, terrible plagiarism. That is when you'll be in trouble, right? I am a very, very strict professor when it comes to plagiarism. Like, I'd rather have you write in your own words and not write great than do any kind of plagiarism, okay? There is Turnitin, there is evaluation of the score of Turnitin, and I do look at that, okay? Now, I know that there are certain sections in maybe a bibliography that might be corresponding to somewhat of a copy and paste, as long as it's an APA 7 format. I'm okay with that. I'm talking about the content, right? I want to see that the content is originally yours. I need you there to also be in a critical thinking state of mind, you know, have some sort of opinion, take the literature apart from a critical perspective, and you'll do fine there. Most students do exceptionally well in the final papers. Okay. Now, the area that a lot of people battle with a little bit from a grade standpoint initially are these exams, all right? They are not tricked up, but think of it this way. You're coming into this course. I don't know what all your backgrounds are. Maybe we'll get a little bit of an understanding of that in a little bit of a introduction section. I will say that when you look at these exams, there's a vast amount of information, and some of you don't come from this background, right? And you're cramming all this stuff into a 14-week course from a pathophysiological standpoint. I will tell you this, if you get 70% or more on any of these quizzes, you know your material, and people's eyes are going up because they're used to getting 98% and 100% and 105% for everything. Not in my courses, okay? I want to see how you're doing at getting some of this knowledge somewhere up here. I promise you, you can have 370% exams and still get an A in this course, right? That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to give you an A. I just want to truthfully see what your ability is to categorize some of this knowledge upstairs. Okay. Now, that's generally in the first exam. By the third exam, everybody is acing it. Again, it's not tricked up. I think it might be a little bit of a exam fear, or because we do have lockdown browser, right? So you do have to show me a video camera, that there's nothing present. You cannot have material with you or notes with you. This is a traditional exam, like sitting in a classroom. And it's not one of my favorite things to do, because I'm not a person that necessarily believes only in that form of education, but that's a requirement for UB professors in most courses, right? We have to have a research paper. We have to have an exam. The exam has to fit a certain criteria, because this is how we prep you for the CNS exam, folks, right? The CNS exam that every one of you wants to write at the end of this program. University of Bridgeport has the highest pass rate of CNS exams of any university in the United States of America. Vastly different, all right? So the pass rate, first time pass rate for UB students are well above 90%. The rest of the country is at 78%. The reason for that is this, right? Because when you get to the CNS exams, you're going to have a closed book exam. So it gets you into that modality of learning and taking exams. So don't be scared about the exams. Now, I don't do curving, all right? I do change the questions on these exams every semester that I do it. However, if an exam question is a bad question, like let's say 60% or 51% of the class gets the question wrong, I throw the question out, okay? So I do go after the exam, look at the average score on every question, look at the average answer on every question, and if that question doesn't fit the criteria of the students answering it correctly, I'll throw the question out. So you automatically, indirectly get a point back. Does that make sense? So that's really what the exams are all about. Legitimately, folks, the exam is not tricked up, but this is a lot of information, right? I mean, we are going from top to bottom in pathophysiology. Every angle, every nook, every cranny is discussed. The exams are non-accumulative, meaning that weeks 1 to 4 is exam 1. Once you've written weeks 1 to 4, you don't write them again. Do you follow? Exam 2 is weeks 4 to 8. Exam 3 is then the final bit of information. So the week that you have classes in is also on the exam. So week 8 is on the exam. I normally open the exams by Wednesday and I close them on Sunday. And I know that's a bit of a cram, but unfortunately, that's the duration and the length of this course. Again, the first exam, look, I've had students that got 100% on the first exam. Don't get me wrong, right? But I don't want you to get panicky if you get 78% or 75%. Legitimately, if you have that level of knowledge imparted in that exam, it's good enough for me to feel that you are ready to move on to the next course, okay? That's why it's only 1/3 of the course. It's definitely the toughest part of the course, but it's only 1/3 of the course. Now you should understand why I am so frantic about your notes. I want to look at your study notes. I want to see if you're interpreting that information properly for the exam. So let's say in a slide, it says something about, I don't know, maybe gluten sensitivity or non-celiac gluten sensitivity. Read my slides, go through my slides. As a study group, study my slides. I have picked up those slides because they're relevant to clinical practice, right? They're not just relevant to just a topic in a textbook. The slides that I have are relevant to clinical practice. Maybe not the first week when we're doing these entry-level meiosis, mitosis discussions. It's more when we get to the clinical application and understanding of it. You'll see by week 3 and 4, it gets more directly involved with specific pathologies and how we address them from a nutritional standpoint. Okay, so remember, this is not a clinical application course. It's still a pathophysiology course, but I did try and bring all the functionality into the lecture. So in a nutshell, please study my PowerPoints. If you do that, you're going to do well on the exams. Study group might not be a bad idea. It's a big volume of work. However, a lot of people struggle to study of other people's notes. Maybe there's 2 or 3 or 4 of you that know each other, and one is doing week 1 summary, the other one's doing week 2 summary. Just make sure that whoever you work with, you trust their notes, right? If you're not going to do those notes yourself. Personally, I like to do my own notes, then be a part of a study group and review them together if that's what you want to do. Okay, because I heard that there's some Facebook thing going on. So by all means, share notes, share information. Nothing is hidden here. If you guys all study together every night until midnight, I don't care, right? As long as all of you have happy smiles by the end of this course. One thing I will guarantee you is you will walk out of this course with a lot of knowledge, right? I designed this course. I've taught this course. There's another professor that teaches this course, but he does use my lectures. When is it? Last week I was speaking at a speaking engagement in Seattle, and there was a student that graduated, and she could remember some of these lectures, and she had graduated 3 years ago. So these things will be helpful. First week is always kind of iffy. Second week gets better. Third, fourth, fifth, 6 weeks, really interesting stuff. So just keep the patience. All right. So that's kind of what I want to say. So please don't email me on Sunday night after the first exam and say, hey, Oscar, Dr. Kutsia, I got 71%. I'm really unhappy with my grade. I don't want to read those things. I tell you 70% or higher is good grade for an exam. That's the way exams normally work. And remember, you never start with 100%, right? You start with 0. So when students email me and say, listen, where did I lose 4 points? You didn't lose 4 points, you gained 96 points. You have to look at it from that perspective, right? You earn your points, you don't lose points. You don't start with 100% in any exam. Again, generally speaking, how many questions do I chuck out? One semester, I think I chucked out 15 questions in one exam. Another semester was only 3. So it's all dependent on exactly how the question was phrased. But please, I do basically copy them straight out of the PowerPoint. So if you're reading a whole paragraph, right, and it's a true or false question, and you in your mind think, well, I don't know, did he change a word? Did he trick up the word? Rest assured, I didn't. I will never do that. I could never understand the point. I've had professors like that where they change one word and they think it's a real good achievement because everybody got the question wrong. If you watch the videos, if you read the material, if you have proper summary notes, you will do well on these exams, okay? So that's really what I wanted to discuss with you. So I'll open it up to any questions and any other concerns that you might have. And you can see here the breakdown of the exams, right? So it's 98 points for the first exam, 203 points for the second exam, 147 points. The final exam, everybody always aces. I think they're in rhythm for exam. I think they're comfortable with the exam. I hardly get anybody that gets less than 92, 93% on this exam by the final one. I will investigate, because it's a requirement, your webcam. I will look at flags, in the exams specifically to see if there's anything going on. It's not because I don't trust you. It's just because it's required from us to do that. Okay. I don't like to police at the end of the day. All right. So go ahead. Any questions for me?
I have a question.
Yes, Danielle.
For the PDFs, I saw for this week, they're saved in the module, and then last week it was embedded in the PowerPoint. Do you want us to incorporate that material into our notes in a mixed in?
Yes. And by the way, that's a great question. I forgot to mention that. Let me just go to a module here. I don't see what you see generally, so let me just get it to a student view on module 1, and then we can look at exactly what you're looking at. So here's module 1. We'll go into a student view. So now I can see what you're looking at, right? So this is module 1, it's locked up. So module 2, is this what you're talking about, Danielle?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So let's click on that. So by the way, folks, these little videos, Pathophysiology of inflammation, please watch them if you want to have a little bit of information. There's no exam questions that ever come out of them, okay? Ever. I won't ever ask you anything out of that. So the PDF, I'm covering up so the PDFs are these PDFs you're talking about, right?
Right, yeah.
Right. So this will be the only PDF I would want you to read. If there's a PDF embedded in the PowerPoint, there's no exam question out of it. You can read it for general information. These are the PDFs. There is 5% of the exam questions come out of the PDFs. Okay. Now, what I would do in these PDFs is not necessarily look at the depth and the statistical analysis or anything in that question. The questions are generally coming out of the general review of the paper, might come out of the conclusions of the paper. If you read the paper once, you'll get 100% on the questions that are in the paper. Okay, so focus only for me from an exam standpoint and read whatever is right here, right? These PDFs. If there's anything embedded in the PowerPoint in the past, it's not the most relevant for me unless it's embedded in here. Make sense? Okay.
Yes.
And there's generally 1 or 2 articles, sometimes 3, some weeks none. So if the article is not here, there isn't one for you to read. Okay, so if I were you, I would look at my videos. These 2, right? These are my videos, right? I would read that, and then there's the PowerPoint. So I'll study from that, and I might browse at this if I am a complete rookie at it or whatever. It's good information. It's really well presented. But if you are running out of time in a week because you're busy with your family or a career or whatever, scrap this, focus on that, and that. Okay?
Piggybacking off of that, when we have the PDFs in our summaries, do you want us to cite them in APA 7 at the bottom?
No.
Okay.
Just cite for me, and I'm just trying to help you guys save time, right? So cite for me only in those critical thinking discussion boards, okay? Let's just make that the rule, and let's simplify it. This is kind of a study group summary, and if you want to put them in there just to kind of get the practice down, by all means do it, but I am not going to not give you 15 points. If I can see that you've watched the videos and grasped the information in your summary, you get 15 points.
Okay, great. Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
So although those PDFs that are embedded into the slides there won't be questions on the exam from those, we should still include them in our summaries?
Well, you can, but for me, the summary is about the exams, right? So
Okay.
I want you to read them, okay, from the standpoint of getting the knowledge, but there's no exam question coming out of that PDF.
Okay.
And if by chance there's a question that shows up in the exam from that PDF, you let me know immediately in an email. Say, hey, you told me there won't be an exam question on this thing. I'm going to put you to it, right? So, yeah, just let me know. I can't recall that I've ever done that by accident. Those PDFs are built in there just for you to kind of expand on a little bit of that knowledge. It isn't a exam question. What's above that attachment is really what will be in an exam question.
Okay. And then for the critical thinking discussion boards, because we are responding, do you want us to post our initial post by Wednesday? Is that a rule?
Yeah, well, unofficially, it's a rule to help your friends out, right? Because some people work earlier in the week and some people work later in the week. I kind of have, even though there is a deadline. Now, some professors get really strict with those deadlines. I know that life gets in the way. I don't want you to post and respond on Sunday afternoon when nobody could really read your response. But if the earliest that you can post is Thursday or Friday, let's just make an unofficial rule, but Friday evening, everybody has to have their first posting. Okay, so those people that work earlier and they might want to respond earlier, then just respond to the people that have posted. Look, I'm not surrealistic here. Okay, I know for a fact that people don't read everybody else's posts. I also studied in my life. I didn't do that because I didn't have the time to read 29 people's responses, right? So I am not going to critically dig into that with you. So if you guys post by Friday, just don't miss the deadline on Sunday, because I normally grade on Monday. And
Okay.
you might find me grading throughout the week, right? When you post something and it's really good, I might grade you and just tell you, I'm going to give you 15 points. Don't forget to respond. And then at the end of the week, I go through to see if you responded. And if you didn't, then I'll deduct 5 points. Sometimes you'll get a grade before you even complete the response because of the volume of students that I have, right? I'm really interested in your main post, obviously, right? I am going to read your responses as well in critical thinking discussion board. But I just wanted to show you sometimes that I am working with you, you know, so because I have a lot of courses and I like to stay on top of my stuff, right? And I don't want my students to wait for grades. I don't want you to wait 3 weeks to get a grade back. With me, you're never going to receive a grade later than, let's say, Tuesday evening of the following week. That's going to be the latest that I will have your grades so that you're in the right frame of mind, you know, for the following week. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, I have one more question.
Yeah, sure.
So in this week's lectures, I noticed that there were some repeat, like you went more in depth in chapter 13 with certain slides. Do you want us to include those slides in both summaries?
No, if you've covered the slide in the previous summary, you don't have to cover it again in this summary, as long as you cover it for your study group, right? Or for your exam. Yeah, no, you don't have to. No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I don't want you to have extra work, Adriana. I want you just to kind of cover, you know, what's relevant. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, folks? Nope. Yeah, so I see a lot of extremely eager students. You folks have chosen a really good path here for a profession. This profession is the fastest growing profession at the moment in the country. There's massive changes for our industry as far as licensure is concerned. You know, when I started in this industry 20 years ago, nobody wanted to pay attention to us. We were allowed in about 6 states. Now we're about 48, you know, and that's going to continue to change. We're definitely the leaders in the industry from a nutritional standpoint. Not taking anything away from registered dietitians, but that is not on the same level from a functional, clinical, nutritional medicine standpoint. So just keep the passion up and what brought you here in the first place, and you will do well. It is grad school. It's a lot of work. I know life happens. Look, let me put it to you this way. If there's a detrimental situation that happens somewhere along the line, and it doesn't always have to be medical, you couldn't get to a post, you couldn't get to a response, just email me, okay? And we'll discuss it, and then I will allow you to add a post so that you don't miss out on points. What I don't want anybody in this class to do is miss out on a third of your grade, which you should get 100% on. Okay, so I'm going to do everything in my power to give that to you because of the exam side of it, right? So if you get 100% in your exam, in your study prep and your questions and your discussion boards, if you do a decent paper to me, nobody gets less than 95% on that because of the passion that's in a classroom like this, right? Because you're going to write. That's why I gave you such an option of topics, right? You can write whatever you want to write about. You're going to do well there. And like I said, you know, it's not like I'm deliberately wanting to get everybody at 70%, but it fluctuates. You know, some people come from a liberal arts background. Some people come from a biochemistry background. Some people come from a mathematics background. You know, this is the first course where you're kind of all thrown together for the launch of your degree. I know that you had some prereqs in certain areas, but so that's why you have that dispersion of grades, right, in the initial phases. But this is serious stuff, right? In the field of nutrition, if you don't do the right things, if you don't interpret the data correctly, if you misinterpret the assessment of a patient's condition, you can hurt them. Right. So it's really important for me for people to have an extremely good base from a clinical perspective when it comes to pathophysiology. And yeah, there's some complicated stuff in here when you're looking at the renal and the acid alkaline base. And all that kind of stuff. But you'll see that it becomes very relevant later in your career, to understand the renal association to the thyroid and detoxification through the cytochrome enzymes in the liver. And, all that stuff is kind of touched upon throughout this whole course, right? And I'm not really wanting you to necessarily say, hey, I've memorized all this stuff, right? Because I know that's not going to happen. But what I'd like you to do, and where these notes are going to really help you, is, and let me just give you an example of why I say that, right? So throughout my life, in all the degrees that I've done, I used to keep copious notes, right, on my lectures, all handwritten. Never liked typing notes. I've kept those things, right? I've now got 3 manuals about that thick that I have on my notes. Guess what happened, right? So all the notes that I've kept through all the lectures and presentations that I've been through in my life, I've sorted them in categories and made these little books out of it. So when I started teaching, on campus at Maryland or Georgetown, students like, what are those? I'm like, no, these are just my notes so I can refer back to things that I've learned that I can impart them to you. So they became like textbooks. Students started to use my handwritten tutorials as textbooks, right, for their own study notes and things, because there was so much information in them. So what I'm saying to you is, when you have these notes, believe me, when you start practicing 2 years from now, at some point, you're going to refer back to some of them. There's going to be a patient that's going to come in with a condition. You're going to say, you know what? I remember in that pathophysiology course, I think it was the 3rd week, we discussed XYZ. There was some notes on this condition. I just want to quickly go read on them. That's what I want out of this for you, as a reference guide for the future that you can refer to get an answer a little bit quicker. That's more based on textbook and science than just Googling it, right? So that's the whole premise behind this. And as a matter of fact, in some of these lectures here or there, you'll see some of my handwritten tutorials where I actually physically have a slide in there that I show you when I'm talking about a specific topic. Okay, so that's the idea behind it. So it's not just for you to pass pathophysiology with an A, which most students do. If you don't plagiarize, right? If you do your assignment and you study for these exams, you're going to get an A. I'll tell you that right now. And if you're at A minus, a 0.5% away from an A, and you were a dedicated student and you worked hard, believe me, I'm going to give you an A. Okay, so don't even have to worry about that. If it's 92.1 and 93 is an A, I'm going to help you get the A, because there's a lot of work here. And for me, that 0.9% isn't worth not giving you that, but you'll earn it, right? I don't give it. So if a person has been consistently late, there's been 1 or 2 instances of plagiarism or copy and pasting problem. Do not copy and paste at all, right? Because I'll pick that up very, very quickly. And I will definitely send an email to a student saying, hey, please, next time, do not copy and paste, because I will deduct points. I know sometimes we run late, we couldn't get to something, we have to post something quickly. And then sometimes students, not deliberately, but kind of like, listen, I got to get something in. It's really late. It's 10:58. I need to get this in by 11:59. I'm just going to quickly I've been in this industry a long time. I'll pick it up immediately, right? When it's not written by you. So please, rather email me and say, hey, I couldn't finish it. Can I have until Tuesday to post this? Then you're going to get full points. You will not get full points if there's any copy and pasting. And that's as much as I'll say about it for you, okay? I'm not going to fail you. I'm not going to throw you out of the university or file an official complaint when that happens. But if there is a consistency in that stuff, I have to, right? If there's a consistency, and that's never happened in this program, okay? So just know that. And I know that I'm not dealing with that, because already the questions that I've had this week are dedicated, committed students that just want to do the right thing. And I was happy with what everybody attempted in the first week. That's why you're all sitting here with 100% average. And thanks everybody for turning in your work on time. It's really helpful for me, because like I said, I have a lot of courses and I grade as quickly as I can. So if there's always one that's delayed, it's hard for me to keep going back to the previous week stuff. So any other questions or concerns or worries, or do you feel a little better now that we've done this? A little bit less stressed, I'm hoping? You're supposed to be stressed. It's grad school, right?
I have one question.
Sure, Jessica.
The direction for the research paper is everything we're going to need as far as requirements, what's included on the syllabus, or are we awaiting more information? Is this something we should be starting right now just based on that, or?
You can. When we go to the assignment section here, let me just quickly pull that up and make sure that what's on the explanation is well enough documented for you. So research paper. So that's only due in July, right? You can see that, right? July 30th.
Okay.
So if you go by these explanations, you're good to go, right? So you're basically going to break the paper down into a heading of epidemiology, risk factors, assessment. What is most important for me is this middle piece. I'm interested in, that's why it has this in the conclusion has the highest grade point. Can you see that? All right, by the way, I forgot to mention this. I don't know if you've seen this video summary. There's a 50-point video summary. I legitimately want you to make a little PowerPoint video, a voiceover video, a Panopto video that you just send me the link. Don't give me the download. Just send me the link wherever you have the video to tell me why you chose the topic on your paper. And the reason I'm doing that is, again, there's a requirement in this course to have like a little video so that you students can get used to uploading videos, and it's like legitimately the logistics of just doing that. Just tell me why you chose your topic, and tell me a little bit about the resources, where you found your resources, like 3-5 minutes, that's it. Okay, and that would give you the points for that. And the conclusion, with information learned, what strategy would you take or invent? Your own protocol, intervention, or hypothesis here may go a long way. Our field needs new and inventive stuff. Okay, so this piece right here, fly as high as you want to fly. Okay, you looked at a topic, let's say it was Hashimoto's thyroiditis, right? Hypothetically, and you've discovered that there's some anecdotal literature that touches on tissue transglutaminase enzyme and binding to a thyroid receptor, and you feel that alpha-gliadin in wheat has some sort of an effect on the expression of that pathology. And you want to design a 1-week protocol, or you looked at a supplement that breaks down this particular protein better, then that's where you do it. So I love reading that part of the papers. That's the thing that I really look forward to, is how do you take this information and apply it in a clinical way? Now, even if there's flaws in your protocol, I just want to see the attempt of creating stuff. And the reason I'm putting that in there, folks, the success that I've had as a clinician has come from inventive, creative, I'm not going to say risky because that's the wrong word, but you need to try different things in order to have outcomes with patients with some rather complicated conditions. Now, all my outcomes or my suggested protocols or whatever I've designed in my life has come from evidence-based, but I've expanded on it, right? I've taken a look at different diets that reverse metabolic syndrome criteria, and I've designed a diet that incorporates most of those things. That's the kind of stuff I'm looking for, right? What would you do? So you can look at, let's say, the functional, because in the middle here, I say, discuss Western therapies and functional nutrition therapies. So there might be literature out there that discusses FODMAPs dieting for small intestinal bowel overgrowth, right? And then there is, let's say, antacids or proton pump inhibitors in Western medicine. You chat about them, you mention them, okay? But what would you do? Would you just give a person a FODMAPs diet? Would you give them additional supplementation? Would you add something in that you found in the literature? Is there something in your mind that you're thinking about that would make sense? You put it for me in that 125-point section. I cannot fail you on your recommendations there and your creativity. Make sense? I want to see how your brain can critically take what's in the literature and improve on it. That's what I'm looking for, or get creative with it. So pick a topic that really interests you. And if you've picked a topic that you don't like, email me and change the topic. There's enough topics, right? To do in the paper. The topics that I put in there are all topics that are relevant to this course, right? So you can go well. So as long as you follow this outline for me, you're going to be fine.
I just want to clarify, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead, Stefan.
For the critical thinking discussion boards, so we're responding to one person, correct? Just
Correct.
one. Okay.
Yeah.
And you said one reference for a response and two for our post.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah. Now you can do
Thank
more
you.
if you wanted to, but you don't. That's it. 2 and 1.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
And also, folks, in the response section, please don't say, "Hey, Leslie, great post. I like the fact that you mentioned gluten-free diets." Please don't do that as a response. Right? I mean, take something that the person said in their discussion and elaborate on a certain section of their discussion. That's the idea of a response. It's not to say, "Great post. I liked your post. It was a fantastic post." And basically just regurgitating some of the information. The idea behind critical thinking is to take something that they've mentioned and either agree, disagree, or elaborate on it. And don't anybody take anything personal when somebody has a disagreement. In your profession, you're going to be disagreed with a lot, okay? There's going to be a lot of medical doctors that are going to disagree with you and say that what you're saying isn't true and based on science, and you're going to have to defend those statements. So just get used to that, right? There's method to the madness here, okay? Obviously maintain respect. Let's not, and I'm preaching to the choir here. Let's not do any kind of derogatory or insulting responses. You can disagree in a very professional manner, right? And sometimes it's not even a disagreement. Sometimes it's more of just adding on something that person might not have known. Or you can say, well, if you've maybe got a little clinical practice experience, well, I haven't seen that when I integrated this, but when I add this to this, then it seems to do a better job. So your paper should be something that you look forward to write, because again, you cannot screw up the 125 points. It's like really impossible, unless your topic is Hashimoto's thyroiditis and you discussing interstitial cystitis in your 125 points. That's not going to work, right? You need to stay with what your topic is about. And let me not forget this. Anecdotal studies are acceptable to me as references. I am a big, big believer in case studies and case series trials. If they're properly written, it's really good research literature. And I'll tell you why. Because in our profession, let's say we want to do a whole food diet, right? And we want to publish on a whole food diet. And you want to prove that an apple a day keeps the doctor away, right? That's what you want to prove. How do you put that in a randomized controlled trial? Can I have a placebo plastic apple? No, you cannot. So you have to have case studies and case series trials that are very well written, where people, practitioners like me or you in the future, published a case study. I was working with Joanne and she had this condition. I did this intervention. This was the pro analysis in either functional testing or blood work. And therefore, future research should further investigate this nutraceutical or this diet for intervention, because this is just a one case. So the next phase would be a case series trial. We have an inclusion and exclusion criteria, and then you put 12 people on the same protocol with the same condition. You look at those same parameters. Now you have a case series trial. And then that can go to a higher tier research. So do not be scared to include case studies or case series trials as evidence for your findings. What I don't want is some Google page, some person's blog, right? I don't want a person's blog as an opinion for a paper, but please dig into case studies and case series trials. Okay, you're going to find a lot of good stuff in there from a nutritional perspective. And actually, I do a lot of work out of that clinically. When I try and investigate something, I always go and look at, and it doesn't even have to just be a nutritionist. Sometimes it's a medical doctor that had a publication on certain things that could be relevant to what you're looking at. Okay. So I hope that clarifies and clears everything up to you. So, how is everybody doing so far? Surviving? Yeah, I get a little bit of a nod of the head here. I don't get super confident. Believe me, folks, it'll be fine. It's always hard to start a new course. It's always intimidating, and I know how much work this is, and I've done many degrees in my life, and I sincerely respect every single one of you for doing this, because it isn't easy. It's not easy to not have a social life and have a job and keep doing this at 1 o'clock in the morning and 7 a.m. And so you have my respect, and I will support you and help you through this course. Just fit those criteria into me, that I have no plagiarism. Try and respond. If you have an issue, email me. I'm definitely here to help you. Okay. And I think that was it from my side. And by the way, thanks for that email. That was, if you look here, I have some announcements and things like that that are preset from the previous courses. And that one announcement came through that shouldn't have gone out. The one that said that there's an article, and then there wasn't an article, and then there was an article. So if there's something conflicting like that, email me immediately, okay? So I can just rest you guys assured that that wasn't the case, okay? All right, so if there's no other questions, let's continue our work, and I'm available whenever you need to speak to me. Okay, let's see, there's a question here. Okay, yeah, let's just thank you. All right, anything else? We're good? All right, awesome. Thanks for joining, and I look forward to working with you folks the rest of the semester. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
What?